A remote team can be just as healthy as a face-to-face team. By the end of this video, you're going to have 3 tips to help build a healthy remote team during COVID. 3 tips for remote teams during COVID. I'm Jono White, founder and principal consultant of Clarity. We work with leaders around the world and would love for you to help us out and subscribe wherever you're watching or listening so that you can stay in the loop, and share this and like it so that others can also get our content on leadership to become the best leader they can be. So 3 tips for remote teams during COVID. Okay, the first tip I want to say is all around vulnerability. Just because you're not face-to-face doesn't mean you shouldn't have vulnerability. Now, if you're going, ugh, vulnerability, gee, that sounds like crying and tissues and trust falls. That's not what we're talking about. What we are talking about is this idea of, I'm sorry, you know what, this is an area of weakness for me. Being able to say things like, hey, can you help me out in this area? Being able to say things like, you know what, I really dropped the ball there. And I think it's because this is an area that I'm still growing in. Now, it's not that those things are easy. They're not. Patrick Lencioni has a great saying around teams, and it's this, in terms of building a healthy team, and this goes for remote teams like yours, building a healthy remote team is both remarkably simple and possible, but it is painfully difficult. And that's where vulnerability comes into play. Don't gloss over this. Vulnerability is the foundational cornerstone of a healthy team. So your remote team, you know, there are so many face-to-face teams that don't do vulnerability and trust well. So why can't your remote team do vulnerability and trust really well? There are some really simple ways you can do that. I've got a bunch of team exercises, if you look at my YouTube channel and other places, around how you can do that with your team. And they work just as well for remote teams as they do face-to-face, honestly. So the first one is, I want to encourage you in vulnerability. The second thing for remote teams is to find creative ways to share your stories. Find creative ways to share your stories. I was working with a school leadership team recently, and I was chatting with them about how they are celebrating the stories in their school. And we were chatting about it, and it actually opened up a really interesting dialogue around creative ways to share digitally the stories, whether people are videoing themselves to share, people are writing. Obviously Microsoft Teams, Zoom, Skype, we're all using these things for our remote teams. And there are some downsides that we're not face-to-face. But there are some opportunities from the fact that we're remote and digital. And one of those opportunities is that people are logging in, and we can create a rhythm, we can build KPIs around sharing stories. Why sharing stories? Because there's nothing that articulates and captures vision, values, even the wins like a story, okay? Even more powerful than some KPIs and numbers, as important as those are. If you can capture the story of this person or that person and how they're doing an amazing job, who's smashing the KPIs, if you can capture that story and share it with the team, that's going to really build your team and help your team gel together. So first tip for remote teams during COVID is vulnerability. Second tip for remote teams during COVID is to share stories. And the third tip for remote teams during COVID is this. I want to ask you, what are your collective goals? What are your collective goals? I know you're not working face-to-face right now, but and I know each of you has your own KPIs, but what are your collective goals? Anytime you want to build a team, I love what Patrick Lencioni says about the difference between a team, which is what you want to build, and a working group. A working group, well, that's like four mates playing some golf. You know what? And I'm teeing off, and then my colleague, she's teeing off, and we get to the next hole. We get to the 18, and we compare, and I say, I shot this score, and she says, I shot that score. And you know what? We did the journey together, but we played our own games and we shot our own scores. That's not a team. That is a working group, but that is not a team. And if you want to build a team, if you're interested in tips for a remote team during COVID, then I would encourage you. You want to be more like a basketball team. You want to be, whether you're face-to-face or remote, hey, if I'm playing offense and you're playing defense, we have one score. And a really practical way you can do that is through collective goals. And collective goals are great because it's a reminder to us to say, whoa, 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 whoa. I know your team, the team you lead, and you've had a great week. I know your team, the team you lead, has had a really hard month. But collectively, this is how we're going. And that's powerful because we want to get rid of the silos, get rid of the individual golf score mentality, and we want to have one score on the board. So we can say, you know what, guys, we're probably a bit behind. Or we can say, we are smashing it. Even though your area is struggling at the moment, and we're all going to pitch in and help you wherever we can, remember that as a team, we're smashing it. That helps to bring a team together. So 3 tips for remote teams during COVID. Vulnerability is number 1. Number 2 is I want you to be thinking about, in terms of digitally, using Microsoft Teams, Zoom, Skype, whatever it is, how can you find creative ways to share stories? Because they're so powerful. Trust me, try it, and you'll see it just, it changes everything when you share the wins, share the stories. And the third one is collective goals. What are your collective goals as a team? If you don't have any, then go and create some together as a team. And hey, if this has helped you get clear in your leadership, then comment with the word clarity. And I would love it if you could like this and share it with your network, and make sure you subscribe wherever you're watching or listening so that you don't miss out on our future content about leadership. But also, we really appreciate the help that you give us to actually get the word out there, because we know that if we can invest in more leaders to become everything they can be, then that's going to make the world a better place, and we're really passionate about that at Clarity. So thanks for watching or listening, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.